I like the Wild Geese, and I'm not going to apologize for it. You see, I have a fondness for this movie, which I'm sure sounds strange. But there's a reason. It was on TV all the time when I was a preteen, and it was one of the few movies that my dad and I would sit down and watch together. See, we never agreed on movies. I liked Star Wars and Star Trek, and he was more of an old school Western fan, which was a genre I really wasn't into at the time. I did try to argue that Star Wars was just a modern Western, but he wasn't buying it. In fact, what he did buy was a TV for my bedroom, so he didn't have to be bothered watching what I liked. However, an action-adventure movie or a war film was a place where we found a middle ground, and we could sit down and watch something together and enjoy it. Like I said, this was on TV all the time, so if he saw it in the TV guide, he'd plan his day around watching it with me. Or if we were flipping channels and came across it, we'd drop everything to watch it together. So I have a fondness for it, and it has a special place for me, and I'll always like it for that reason. But beyond that, I actually think it's not your average action film, and it has something interesting to say. The storyline's pretty straightforward. A group of mercenaries are hired by a British banker to go in and rescue a deposed African leader. He's been imprisoned by a ruthless dictator. Now, while that may sound like standard fare, it wasn't handled in a standard way. This wasn't some young crack commando unit that was going to go in and rescue the president and just do so in a straightforward action format. These mercenaries were aging. They were past their prime. And they hired some older movie stars from previous decades whose careers were on the decline to play the roles. And that gave it a layer of depth that it wouldn't have had otherwise. Richard Burton, while he's only in his early 50s in this film, actually, unfortunately, looks much older because of the hard drinking. In fact, he looks older than Harrison Ford does in his late 70s, and that's something to keep in mind when we're critical of Ford reprising the role of Indiana Jones. If, like in this film, they work the aging into the storyline, it actually gives it something more to say. I like Burton in the film. As a kid, I liked Roger Moore and John Kani. They played Sean Finn and Jesse Link, respectively. And they were sort of the action heroes of the film. In fact, Roger Moore's character reminded me a lot of Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica, which is something I never told my dad. As I've gotten older, the character that most appeals to me is Richard Harris. He has a subplot in the movie because he's an older man with a young son. And it's just the two of them. And they mean everything to each other. And they're both looking forward to this ski holiday that they've planned over Christmas and they're supposed to go on. And Harris gives up that ski holiday in order to go rescue this man because he believes in the cause. And there's a scene between him and the young actor who plays his son, who does a very good job in the movie. And Harris is telling Emil, his son, that he's not going to be able to go on that ski trip. And his son doesn't understand. And it's heartbreaking to watch. And so I appreciate it in a way now at my age with kids that I never did when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I liked the movie for its straightforward action pieces. But now I realize there's a lot of layers here that I didn't understand when I was younger, or at least I didn't consciously understand. Now, the movie wasn't without controversy. It was filmed in South Africa during the apartheid government. And there were a lot of protests about that. In fact, it was picketed at its premiere in England. I think it's important to remember, though, that John Kani and Winston Nchona, who plays President Limbani, were both South African actors. And they decided to do the film after reading the script and feeling like it actually had something to say about the Africa that they lived in. Both thought that the exchanges between President Limbani's character and the character played by Hardy Kruger named Peter were really important and had depth to them in meaning. So take that for what it is. I liked the film back when I was a kid because I thought it was a good action movie. I appreciate the fact that the characters, many of them, were older and that aging was worked into the plot now that I'm older. And I really like the story about the father and the son. And I think the character arc that Richard Harris's character has is extremely important and unique to a film like this. So back when I was younger, it was one to see. And it still is. I suggest you check it out if you haven't. Maybe watch it with your dad or your son.